on to the fourth edition and possibly the final edition of Coffee and Counsel, where we're talking about the future. We've seen some of the changes, we've tried some of the changes, and now we're going to talk about what's here to stay. The first subject has to be the grand trial of state between Charles and Alice, who've been doing a trial via video conferencing over the last 2 days. Alice, how have you found it?
Well, we were using Skype for Business. Well, that's what the court chose to use. And that was my first experience of that. It's safe to say it wasn't without its technological difficulties with microphones and so on. I think Charles had a really difficult day when we had a test run.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk. I mean, we've got to be careful, obviously, what we say about the case because it isn't over yet. Judgment's reserved. But I mean, I can give you some top tips on the tech. Number one, turn your computer on long before anything is about to happen, because there's nothing slower than a Mac booting up when it needs to be booted up within 5 minutes. So that's tip number one. Tip number two, Skype for Business. If you have this is quite technical, if you have a Mac running Catalina, it will not recognize your microphone. And what you need is 4 hours of dedicated IT assistance from an expert to actually recode your computer to make it work. And fortunately, we had a technical run the day before where this issue emerged. Lots of people shouting at me saying, your microphone's on mute. And it's like, no, it's not working on this or any other computer in the house. And it's Catalina. Catalina, if you have Catalina and Skype for Business, that is a cocktail that doesn't mix, and you need to have some tweaking. I think tip number three is it goes at the pace of the person with the worst IT, who I won't identify. But if everybody doesn't have a properly equipped Adobe reader that can follow all the hyperlinks and go at the bookmarks, then all that tech is kind of useless. And there's the thing, as a resident of Newcastle, there's a thing I call the Leeds dilemma, which is, do you drive down the night before, stay in a hotel, probably don't sleep because it's a hotel, but at least you know you're going to be at court in the morning? Or do you take the risk and at the A1, leaving Newcastle at 6 a.m. to get to Leeds in good time for court? And it was fantastic to just have none of that and just be able to roll into the living room and press go. Yeah, that
was good. If you think, we had people from all, not just in the northeast, Darlington and Durham and Newcastle, but also Oxford, London, like people were all over the country. So that is
the
really
Judge's Clerk was Southampton, wasn't he? I think so.
Yeah.
Literally all over the country.
Yeah.
We should say this is it's a judicial review case. So that's the administrative side, the civil side of it. On the criminal side, they've now been using the cloud video platform, common video platform, I think. Shada, you've had some experience of that. What is it?
Well, I've only had one experience so far. So instead of it being a app-based system, it's on the web browser. So they recommend using Crowe. It's meant to be more consistent and not have the same problems as Skype for Business.
Yeah.
But actually, the first hearing we did, we still had the same problem with the microphones. So there was quite a delay. But I think Charles is right in terms of it's the Mac with certain software on it that seems to be causing all these problems. But the court also seemed to be running it a little bit different at the moment, in the sense that initially you've been sent out invites which were for your specific slot, and now it appears that they're opening the court around about 9:45, and everybody can just dial in when it's their time.
Toby, I think you're probably the most plugged in to how widespread this CVP is going to be used. Have you heard?
I understand it's going to be rolled out across all of the books. It's taking over crime at the moment, albeit that, ironically, the only case I've done this week was at a court which doesn't have it yet. So I was on Skype for Business and finding the traditional difficulty of having a Mac. So fortunately, I'd got my laptop next to the Mac with the case on the DCS. And so I very quickly had to switch the two over so that I appeared in court on the DCS, on the laptop, and had the case on the Mac. But the plan is definitely that it's going to be rolled over to family and civil as soon as they can do it.
One question which has been in the papers, in fact, recently, is whether we can have a remote jury trial. Do you know, Toby, whether there's any plans to do jury trials via the CVP?
I don't believe that they're going to do that. What interestingly and anecdotally, certain resident judges, I understand, are seeking to temporarily get the use of larger premises so that they can run conventional trials, but with proper social distancing. And they're looking at things like university lecture theatres and big public buildings with much bigger floor plans that would allow proper spacing of people. I think that's the more likely route that they'll go down. There's a concern, I think, that if you have juries appearing remotely, you can't properly control whatever the ne'er-do-wells might try and do to interfere with the jury. If you've got a serious criminal trial, there's the risk that somebody is being able to get at the jury, and you just don't know about it if they are remote.
But that raises the question as to how we actually do a jury trial when there's social distancing in place. Having everyone squeezed into a jury box doesn't seem possible in most courts that I've ever been in.
Yes, I would agree. It seems to be quite challenging at the moment. I think I've heard the idea of using two courts and next to each other and using a video link between them, perhaps having two judges. I don't know how well that would actually work.
Something, Alice, that you touched on earlier is about accessibility to these video conferences, people all over the country dialing in to it. How many people are on the call during the case?
Was ours about 12, I think? But that's professional clients, so solicitors, and then officers from local authority and so on. My lay client wasn't able to take part, and it didn't actually matter for this case for various reasons and because of what her instructions were. But it would have been, if she'd wanted to take part, and it's about her, she's entitled to, she wouldn't have been able to. I don't know what our position would have been. We might have been saying this can't go ahead because she didn't have, she's not got Skype for Business. I don't even think she had access to a laptop or anything like that. So, I mean, I do think it's great for arguments that are purely legal arguments, no witnesses, short applications, appeals, things like that. But even then, there's still it's supposed to be a public hearing. How do the public know even what's going on?
Yeah.
But I think we'll get there with this type of thing. I think there are definitely benefits. I mean, we've come on so far so quickly.
Yeah, Charles certainly mentioned the idea of open justice, perhaps live streaming it on YouTube, more inventive ways to try and get it out there in the public. But it seems to be a bit of a fallacy at the moment that there is access to the courts.
But even streaming it on YouTube, that's great, but huge swathes of the population don't have access to YouTube. And in areas that deal with vulnerable people, I just don't see how that's feasible or fair.
I mean, it's obviously a developing situation, and I think one of the problems of Skype for Business is it couldn't be streamed. and anybody watching was shown as a participant in the call. And I mean, it was suggested we could provide the link to other people, but there's obviously a technical risk if you gave it wide publicity of flooding the meeting essentially with participants. But I mean, in licensing, and I'm a member of some WhatsApp groups for licensing practitioners, and online hearings has massively improved open justice, because every case that's now happening remotely in licensing is put on this WhatsApp group. The people watching it are other licensing lawyers, so I think it's quite terrifying for the participants, because they were in sort of a town hall in Liverpool with someone with nothing better to do in the public gallery, and there's now 47 licensing barristers watching the case around the country giving live commentary on WhatsApp. But there is real potential for open justice. I mean, I know Alice said some people don't have access to YouTube, but some people can't get to Leeds, which is our nearest administrative court, because it's expensive. And I mean, and traveling to Leeds from Newcastle is expensive, but it's peanuts compared to traveling to London. The savings that could be achieved just by being able to watch this online, and the increase of access to justice, I think there's real potential for it to far more open justice, and the things that lawyers do, which people don't really understand. I mean, the tide was turning in licensing over the last few years. Journalists live tweet the cases, and we began to see some cameras in some high-profile nightclub closure hearings. But it will just become de rigueur for these things to be streamed on the local authority website, left on the local authority website to watch, and that's got to be a good thing.
And it leads to a question as to permanence of some of this. We've now sampled some of the tech. Do we think it really has a place in our future?
Yes, well, I really hope so. I mean, as someone who commutes between Newcastle and London and doesn't particularly enjoy that, I really hope that I can cut out quite a lot of travelling by doing things remotely, whether that's editorial meetings, chambers meetings, things going on in London, all the way up to hearings. It makes massive sense in the area I do, where legal costs are enormous. Money is, lawyers churning through money, producing paper bundles, going up and down the country, and the ability to just strip out the paper, strip out the travel, and work more efficiently. Yes, I really hope it stays.
The great benefit about this cast is that we have, if I may say so, the older, more senior, experienced end in
Thank
Toby. And the more friend, Toby, being the most experienced among us, can you see this as being a game changer?
Oh, I think definitely. I think for a lot of hearings that don't require a lot of people to be present, it's going to become the norm. My area obviously is crime. I can't see it ever replacing things like jury trials, but all of the preliminary hearings, I think, will shift over to this sort of hearing. There had been the beginnings of people being able to appear remotely at pre-trial review type hearings. Someone wouldn't be required to travel from Liverpool to Teesside for a 15-minute mention in a case, and would be there on a screen. Well, I can't see why anybody needs to travel to Teesside for that case now, unless they happen to be there. The judge is there, and that will all be done remotely. Come a criminal trial with a jury, I don't think that will be done remotely, but I will be astonished to see expert witnesses turning up in court, because they'll all just say, well, it allows me to be appearing simultaneously in, say, 3 trials rather than having to shuttle around the country to go to one trial after another. What will happen, though, I suspect, is there'll be a sort of a bidding war for those sorts of witnesses, because I'm afraid the experience of the criminal courts is that the practitioners prefer, if they want to rely upon a witness, they prefer to have the witness as live as possible, which is why there's a preference, if you can get complainants to appear in court rather than giving their evidence over a TV link, you'll do that. And somehow the physical presence of people in court is still seen to be more persuasive in those sorts of cases, in being able to explain things and engage with the jury. It doesn't matter so much if you've got a tribunal of fact that's one person, but juries, I think, are strange beasts, and I don't think we're ever going to get around that side of it.
And Shada, this is your second six. This is your new normal, appearing via video. I suppose for your first hearing, we can, like Charles with the licensing lawyers, all of Chambers can dial in and watch your performance.
I was just thinking that earlier and thought how terrifying it would be. I am enjoying watching it, watching them at the moment, but the idea of Chambers dialing in to watch me just seems a little bit scary.
Well, since it's so early on a Friday, I thought I should share with you Trinity's Instagram. This is Alice. This is your dog, isn't it?
Yeah. One eye.
How long did it take for you to strap on the bands and put the wig on?
Oh, the bands is one of those, the ones women wear. We just Velcro it down, so that took no time. And I had a treat in my hand, so I put the wig on. She looked a bit unhappy, but sat there for the treat.
Sorry, the wig fits her surprisingly well. I thought it was custom.
Yeah, it looks loads better than it did, like, when I actually put it on. Like, it's like nearly as big as her whole body. So the photo just looks really well, worked really well. It's the best thing I've ever done.
Haircuts.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry, but it's the same one.
To compete with Toby's.
Toby's age.
Talk to everyone soon.
Bye.
Bye.